All right, so welcome back, everyone. Dr. Sears back again. I mentioned this in the other course, ventilation, but I did find out what my new title is hopefully going to continue to be, and that's adjunct professor. So we'll see how that goes, but that's what it would be. And like I said in the other class, again, I am a little bit late getting this out. I had to spend quite a few hours shoveling about 14 inches of snow off the driveway. So yeah, it took me a little while. But with that, let's get into this and let's talk a little bit about what ground control is exactly. We'll also continue with what we're going to be looking at more closely in this class, and that sort of thing. So let's check that out. So ground control is a subfield, I've called it, of mining engineering. So just like ventilation, right? Ventilation is a component of the system of mine design, and ground control is another component of it. And if you kind of say it backwards, it gives you an idea of what it means. But it's basically controlling the ground, right? In the case of this photo, you have roof support and rib support, that sort of thing. But it can mean quite a lot more than that. We're talking about like rock mass classification. Like what's the overburden like? Like that sort of thing. Large scale, all the way down to some extra skin control with these. Maybe some pans. On these roof bolts, right? So it also is a lot, right? Ventilation's a lot. Ground control's a lot too. It's more than just roof control, okay? Its scope, covers all aspects of the ground, including the pillar, the rib, the floor, and even surface mining, slope stability, right? Here, this is this photo. I usually actually don't like showing this photo because people will point out that I'm not wearing safety glasses. And what happened was, I had just got here and I was cleaning my glasses off. That's why my shirt's kind of sticking out right here. I was cleaning my glasses off because they'd gotten fogged up, and my co-worker took my photo. So, but I'm still showing it because what you're looking at here is a fault, right? You can see this. There's a fault running through here, and so I'm actually about the bottom of my feet are at the top of my colleague's head, right? And we're at the tail drive. This is the long wall, right? He's down at the tail drive level, and I'm up above him. You can also see, the support they had in here, these large, cans. Now you can see how much they've converged, right? They started squeezing and bending, that sort of thing. This mine also did experience quite a bit of floor heave when, it'd be mined, 10, 12 feet high, and on retreat near the the tailgate, you would have maybe it was like 7 feet high or so. So maybe 3 or 4 feet of floor heave or so, maybe even 5, but significant amounts. So there's also like equipment selection, right? Like the powered supports, like we talked about in underground mining, long wall shields, right? That's also part of ground control. We'll talk about inseam rock partings, like you see here. Rock brows that can occur if you're taking extra height out of the roof, and we'll talk about methods to support these. And we'll talk about support techniques for poor conditions, right? Like, roof like this, you can see where it's fallen out kind of quite a lot. It's even arched out. We'll talk about what you can, install to try and support these types of openings, and some of the other things that you can do. Some of the I mean, glue and grout and that sort of thing. We'll also talk about the importance of protecting travelways and belt lines, right? Travelways and belt lines primarily because that's where people are working at most of the time, right? So, protect those first, right? And then also, you need to think about, long-term support in those entries that end up being, areas where people are traveling and the belt, right? Because for one, that's how you're getting the co outside, and two, people are over there pretty frequently too, right? So those need to be considered, perhaps long-term openings, right, where you're going to put in even extra support. So we'll talk about all that. We'll discuss challenges with deep cover mining. I know we haven't, touched on that subject in the underground mining class, but we'll do better with that, right? Because this is still a thing. We still have deep cover mines out there. This mine in particular, at this location, was about 2,500 feet deep. That's the deepest I've ever been. I know that some mines in this country got to about 3,000 feet deep. I don't think we've ever been deeper than that. Germany, historically, they got very deep mines, 5,000 feet or more. But we'll talk about some of these challenges that you can encounter. And we'll talk about multiple seam interactions. Okay, I know we started into that subject as well in the underground mining class. A lot of this is a continuation of all of that stuff. You can see in this photo, right? See, they were expecting conditions to maybe be bad here. So there's lots of extra support, right? There's mesh up, there's posts set everywhere, okay? And, but that's something that looks really good. Or you can have something that looks like this, right? And we'll talk about what happens in pillar squeezes, including this one that I was at. I took this photo, and you can see that there's a lot going on. All these posts are busted out. There's been a lot of conversion from the roof and the floor here. There's two prop setters, and they're still standing there, but I don't know when they were installed. Okay, but they haven't. They're still there. But yeah, this. There was a lot of movement here, especially in the floor. You can see back here where it's heaved up. Roof's good. Roof's great. But everything else was coming together in this mine. I've seen this in a couple of different places. And, I'm not saying that, this never stops, that this opening is going to just completely close up. I'm not saying that. It's going to reach, equilibrium at some point. But what it is it's so much that you really can't control it all that much. And I just noticed there's another prop setter here that you can see, and at the bottom, they have these cutouts in the wood and these rings on here that allow them to converge, and you can see that it's converged, a few inches, right? So, anywho, we'll talk a lot about that. The types of supports, I know I just mentioned the prop setters, and you can see this one also has a wedge at the top. It's common to set posts with a wedge and I don't know that that's necessarily what this one is doing, because it's in there pretty far. But if you only put it in a little ways, you just kind of tap it in, it can be used as an indicator, right, to show if that post is loading up. So if it gets squished and the wedge kind of breaks off or falls down, then you know that it's loading up. And you have a crib here on the left that is taking load. You can see how it's sort of bending down, especially in this area. So this crib is loading up, and it's being pushed out too. It's a lot to think about. Okay, when we're talking about the different types of supports, but we'll we'll get into those as the best we can. Yeah, we'll be talking about rib support too, rib bolts. We'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of resin, versus mechanical. Whereas in this photo, you see a lot of mechanical bolts here with the half header size board on here as well. But that coal's sloughed out, over time. It's sloughed out of here, and this is what it looks like now. And this isn't all about coal. We'll talk about some other things too. I mean, we'll cover basic limestone and hard rock pillar design. I showed this photo. So this is a limestone pillar here, and this is maybe the most perfect example I've ever seen of jointing. But this pillar almost looks like it's dimensioned, right? It almost looks like it was cut like this. Okay, but it wasn't. And what you're seeing here is two orthogonal joint sets, and you can actually see additional joints here, so you can see them, and that's what this is. But it's also going this way too, so it's they're roughly 90 degrees right there, and it's a perfect example of that. And so I love this photo for that. But we will be talking about those things as well. And we'll typically talk about what's used in limestone mines. So you can see in this photo that there's bolts in here. But in limestone, those tend to be longer. They tend to be thicker, diameter, like 1 inch, or like even maybe a 1.1 or 2. Large size bolts there, or I say 1.1 or 2, like an inch and an eighth maybe. You can get very large, larger diameter, and we'll talk about that. What they typically use. We'll also talk about things you might see in metal mines. For example, this is a friction bolt. You would have a plate on this end, and you would insert this into a hole, and you expand the intersection of this pipe. You expand it with water, right? And it's just the friction that holds it in place. We also call these split sets, I've heard them called, which, as far as I know, I believe is a brand of friction bolt. It's kind of like, if I'm explaining this correctly, it's kind of like the way we talk about Kleenexes, right? They're tissues, but we call them by the brand Kleenex because everybody knows what it is. So I think that's what's going on here, but I've seen both talking both friction bolts and split sets. But either way, that's what these are. And you see them, you tend to see them more in metal mines. Pretty easy to install. However, you'll notice that they are hollow, right? So they don't really have a lot of stiffness. I remember one time someone was asking me, and they were in hard rock, and they were talking about shearing bolts, right? And I was like, are you using friction bolts? And then they're like, yeah, we are. I was like, can you put in rebar? And they said yes. And I said, try it, because it's a whole lot stiffer than this bolt, right? And if you're having shearing, then you need a stiffer system, right? And so I don't know if they ever did or not, but something I just thought of that, like I said, we deal with in coal regularly, right? But the first thing we're going to start talking about in this class, we're going to talk about geology and start talking about the rock itself, right? Because it's very important that what's there as much as you possibly can, right? You need to collect as much information as you can on it, and we'll talk about ways to do that. But yeah, so we're going to start with the ground because it's the thing we're talking about. We're going to talk about how geology impacts, ground control decision making, right? So geology is going to be a big part of this, and that's where we're going to start out at. And we're also going to talk about characterizing the rock mass itself. So the whole thing, right? Not what's the rock mass like? And you're going to characterize it a lot based on fractures, discontinuities. You know, where's the bedding here? I can't really see it, but you know, joint set here, joints here, right? You know, different stuff. So we were talking about various ways to, you know, characterize the rock. And all that's before, you know, we even, you know, think about, you know, pillar strength equations or, you know, roof bolt suspension calculations. We'll be talking about that stuff too later on. But with that, hopefully that helps answer any of your sort of beginning questions about what ground control actually is. So with that, we'll see you next time.